إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين.
If we look at the word ibadah, then we see that it comes from these three root letters, abada. And so our question is, what is ibadah and who is considered to be a true abd? When Allah tells us, for example, in the Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in kullu man fis samawati wal ardi illa atir rahmani abda. There is none in the heavens and the earth, but he comes to the All-Merciful as a servant. A better translation would be, he comes as a slave. That usually when we want to understand the word better, we look at the opposite and see what the opposite is also saying. And so if we look at Malik being the opposite of Abd, he is the one who owns that slave. The Malik is the owner of that slave. In terms of Mawla, he's there as well. The Mawla is the one who is in charge of that slave. He has that wilaya and that authority over that slave as well. So both of them are used as the opposite of Abd. Now, when it comes to us being the slaves of Allah, how does this ownership get shown in our existence? We can look at it in three ways. If you look at an abd, the abd is somebody who does everything for the sake of the master. He almost doesn't have a will of his own. Anything and everything that he does is for the sake of that master. In other words, his actions are pretty much owned by that master. The master owns his actions because everything he does is for the sake of that master. But not only that, anything that he possesses is actually the possession of the abd. Why is that? Because he himself is owned by the abd. So how can something that is being owned own something independently of the abd? It doesn't make sense. So anything that I as an abd own, my master would actually be the one who owns that one. Okay, so we talked about how the actions are owned by the master. Not just his actions, but the possessions of this abd are also owned by the master. And also he himself is owned by the master. So at all three levels, this is the position of the abd with respect to the master. Now, when we talk about this relationship between human beings, a human slave belonging to a human master, in reality, this relationship isn't a real ownership. It's an arbitrary relationship. Why? Because today I might own somebody as a slave, tomorrow I'll sell him off to somebody else. And so that ownership is just something very temporary. Not only that, but two people can own that slave at once. And so he is not really and truly owned by that one person. In terms of what I can do to the abd, I have limited rights. I can't kill him. I don't have any right to kill him. So that shows that my ownership of him is also limited. And so what we find is that the human relationship of master and slave is something which is a social construct that has been legislated, and it is there purely for this relationship in society to function. Even if you think about it in terms of ownership of things, when I own a house, for example, there's nothing in reality that's connecting me to that house. It's simply an agreement that I have with the rest of society to say that this house is one that I have the right to use and nobody else does. But when we look at the reality in terms of the existence of myself and that house, we're two independent existences. And so that real ownership is not actually there. Now, if we look at it from the point of view of Allah, when it comes to us being the slaves of Allah and being owned by Allah, then this relationship is real. Now, if we compare those same three features now, we say that we have been created for Allah for a purpose. And so everything we are doing should be for the sake of Allah. In other words, Allah owns our actions. And then we talk about the things that we own. I own a house, but we just said that this was just a social construct. And so in reality, I don't own anything. Anything that I own actually really is only belonging to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's just that He has given me the permission to have the right to use this. Let me give you an example. Those of you who have worked in an office might be able to relate to this example. Let's say one day you walk into your office and you go towards your desk, but unfortunately you've reached really late that morning. And so what you find is the person who normally sits next to you is talking to somebody, and that person is sitting on the chair that you use in that office. So what are you going to say to him? You're going to say Assalamu alaikum if he's a Muslim. Otherwise you say good morning if you're not too late and it's not already afternoon. And then you'll say to him, excuse me, but you're sitting on my chair. But think about it. Is it really your chair? It's not really your chair. The chair belongs to the office. The office has given you the right to use that chair whilst you are working in that office. But we still say, my chair. The same thing applies with every one of our possessions. In reality, everything is owned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it's like that chair where we have been given that permission to use those things which we call our possessions to be able to live and function in society. But at the end of the day, all of it is owned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so Allah is the owner of our actions. He's the owner of our possessions, but He is also the owner of ourselves. What do we mean by that? When we talked about that human relationship, we said it's not a real ownership because I don't really own that slave. I can't do whatever I want to that slave. However, when it comes to Allah and us, He actually owns our existence. Now let's pause here. Let's go back to the beginning of our creation. How did our existence come about? We say that Allah gave me my existence. What does that mean? If you take this scenario of me giving somebody something, take it in this world. I give Shabbar Ali a pen. So what do we see? There are 4 things over here. There is I, there is Shabbar Ali, there is the pen, and there is this act of giving. So I am giving a pen to Shabbar Ali. 4 things. Now try relating it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our creation. Allah gives me my existence. Are there those 4 things over here? Am I already there for Allah to give something to me? Or is it His act of giving that brings me about in the first place? Obviously it's the second one, because it's my very existence that's being given. And so these 4 components are not there. It's Allah through His giving existence that brings me about. And that is what shows this real ownership that He has of me, because I'm not there in the first place. He is giving me. He's giving me that existence. And so I am well and truly owned by Allah. So both in terms of His actions, in terms of His possessions, and now we say in terms of His existence as well. If we keep this concept in mind, we go back to our original question. What is the meaning of ibadah? Ibadah, even though we usually translate it as worship, in reality, it is this submission and this acknowledgement and this display of myself as one who is completely owned by Allah in terms of my actions, in terms of my possessions, in terms of my existence. There's another way we can understand who an abd is. There is this word in Arabic called ta'bid. It's usually associated with roads, where we talk about the idea of ta'bidu shari'. And it literally means paving the road. You know, when a road doesn't already exist out there, it's just, for example, a dirt road. People have just been using it for the sake of moving from one place to another. And slowly, when it becomes busy, then the government would probably make it an official road, and they would pave that road, put tarmac on it or put asphalt on it so that the cars can go on there. Now, what's the purpose of that asphalt? What's the purpose of paving that road? The purpose is that when it wasn't an official road and it was just a dirt road with just lots of soil, it's very bumpy. It's got a lot of obstructions and obstacles and it's dangerous. But what we want to do is we want to allow the vehicles to pass over that road with ease and without any obstructions and without any obstacles and bumps. If we apply this to the concept of being an abd, a true abd is one who paves his existence. He paves his heart and soul such that the commands of Allah can pass through him without any obstructions, without any obstacles, without any bumps. And we see that this idea of abd coming from this concept of ta'bid is also a very beautiful one, where it shows this submission to Allah and how anything that He commands us will naturally flow through with ease, and we will perform it without any obstructions and obstacles.